Yeah, well, do you want to know the reason why we're always paying for this? I mean, of course, some other countries are paying a little bit. Do you want to know why America always pays just a ridiculous amount of money to do things that don't make sense at all for the American people?
Yes, please tell us.
Because we're being used as a tool by the United Nations to achieve their agenda, their global agenda. The American people, the government at the very top levels, the vast majority of them, they don't care about the American people. A lot of them care about themselves, getting elected, maintaining power. And the way they make sure that they do that is to go along with these insane globalist agendas that are packaged by the media via their neuro-linguistic programming techniques, which has been going on for a very long time. And the people fall for it, or enough of the people fall for it, which Aldous Huxley proved is possible when he broke it down and said, okay, it was found that 20% of the people are entirely controllable and just don't have the critical thinking process to bring any sort of intellectual challenge into the system. And you have 20% of the people that are entirely uncontrollable and free-willed and will make their own decisions. And then you have the 60% in the middle with enough repetition and enough of the right type of presentation, that 60% to varying degrees will be subject to falling in line with the other 20%. So we're in a battle right now for the middle 60% to wake up, to realize that America is being used as a tool of the United Nations to destroy freedom all over the world and install tyranny, including here in America. And one of the things I said in my keynote speech for the Constitution Party 2010 was that we are the new Native Americans. What was done to the Native Americans is being done to us now. The land grab, Agenda 21. I'm very proud of my Tea Party over here, even though when it comes to candidates, they could be a little bit better with the way they behave, but their behavior with that is actually surprisingly not as biased as I would expect it to be. But they had some presentations on Agenda 21. I was very impressed with that. But what they really need is a candidate to come in and tell them where Agenda 21 is fully going. Because right now they're just viewing it as a land grab.
Right.
It's a lot more than a land grab.
Right, I would agree with you there. And you mentioned the 60% in the middle that just go along. They just follow whatever they're basically programmed to believe on the television. So
the 60% in the middle actually could go either way. It's just that they're susceptible to being pulled into the 20% that is totally controllable, and they're susceptible to being drawn in and more closely aligned with 20% that's not controllable, so that the battle is over the middle 60%. And this is why when some of the Ron Paul supporters get a little too aggressive in a debate with somebody, and I see a lot of what goes on Facebook, when they do that, they're pushing the middle 60% away. So I'd like to see a lot more of the Ron Paul supporters be a bit more peaceful in presenting their ideals. Don't just spew the Ron Paul rhetoric, but do it in the kind way and the peaceful way that lends people more open to your ideas.
Right. Yeah, that's actually very good advice there. And while I'm not specifically a Ron Paul supporter, I do have these conversations. I do have these arguments with people, and I do get a little aggressive sometimes. Honestly, it's just human nature. You get frustrated, but that's very good advice. So I want to move now, and I don't know that this is an issue that you've ever addressed or that you may even have a position on, but you talk about the susceptible 60% in the middle, and I might make the argument that these people are so wishy-washy because they don't actually understand what's really going on in the world. We know Charlotte Iserbyt wrote a book called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. We know that so many kids now are put on Ritalin or Adderall or a number of other drugs, medications, that 60% of the nation is drinking fluoride, which is basically a sedative. It was first used in the Nazi concentration camps to keep the Jews from trying to escape. I mean, it almost seems like a chemical warfare on the minds of the American people in order to keep them stupid. And, the educational system, you got the federal government with how many strings on all these dollars, I mean, is there anything we can do to free up the educational system so that it is not so much to dumb people down, but to actually educate them?
Well, as you'll see on my website, I do advocate for parents' rights, parents to homeschool their kids. And when we have an economy that works, more parents will be able to do that. Also, a lot of people forget this one. There used to be what was affectionately known as a school, they would call it a school mom or a school man. And it would just be a local woman, usually, that, different times. So, of course, things were different back then. Most teachers were women. But the local community would just pick somebody that they felt was responsible to educate the children. And they would collectively pay that person a living wage or slightly better, whatever the case may have been, and they would send their children to this person to be educated. And that worked fine for a very long time, and the government decided they didn't like it, and now we don't have it anymore. But I would like to see that as an option. Okay, maybe a couple with means to pay for somebody to educate their child that didn't necessarily want to homeschool or didn't necessarily want to pick a private school. Why couldn't they pick somebody that they personally knew to be wise and good educator and would stick to certain curriculum that would be relevant, maybe some extracurricular things as well. Why can't parents have a right to do that? I have a problem with that.
Yeah, that does seem like a good solution because there are a lot of parents who want to homeschool who maybe don't have the time for it, and they could entrust their child to somebody else. That's a really interesting solution. Okay, so you have on your website you want to withdraw funding and binding relationships to international groups. Of course, our forefathers spoke about the dangers of foreign entanglements. So what is this alluding to? Do you want to name any specific groups that you think we should not be involved in?
Wow, that might take a while. Getting ready for an alphabet soup here. The UN, the IMF, WTO, the list could go on and on and on. But we, more often than not, wind up bearing the burden of the expense. It becomes welfare for other countries, and the end goals achieved are usually against the better interests of the American people, whether they realize it or not. And these groups are by far more destructive to us than they've ever been helpful. And it's got to stop. The gravy train needs to stop here. We're going to collapse the currency if this continues, and nobody wants to see that. Whether it's somebody that believes that's going to happen or not, somebody that's a financial consultant and has looked into this, and history speaks for itself. I mean, look at our Great Depression, right? The same kind of nonsense that went on with the financial markets in the late 20s. Look at the fall of the Roman Empire. Look at the fall of the Ottoman Empire. We're going down the same road, but even the demise of the USSR. We're going down the same road of follies that every vast empire has gone down throughout history, thinking somehow this time it's going to be different.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's very evident that America is in decline, and I think, that basically people can understand that. We had a recession in the 80s, and then I think it's been downhill ever since then. I think you can compare it to vehicles, really. I mean, if you get a vehicle from the 70s, it's strong, it's sturdy, it's reliable, but you look at what they're making nowadays, it's practically trash. And you look at the American economy as a whole, we've been completely debased. Our industries are gone. We are largely a service economy now, and everybody's walking around thinking that things are going to recover. We had Obama a couple of years ago saying, "Oh, I'm starting to see green shoots now," like things are going to just all of a sudden get better for no reason. But I mean, how can the economy recover when unemployment is still low? We really don't have any industries to speak of. I mean, do you think we're going to come out of this? And if so, how? How on earth are we going to get out of this mess?
Well, I mean, in regards to the green shoots, it's widely well known that Obama at one point smoked a lot of marijuana. So maybe he has a plant in the White House garden we don't know about, and that's green shoots. Because if he's talking about the economy, he couldn't be more wrong.
Right.
And yes, I believe we can come out of this. But we need the right people in office making the right decisions, and an honest media would certainly be helpful also. And it's probably going to get worse before it gets better, unfortunately. But this is how the economy works. Economy is cyclical. Free market economies are cyclical. You have your ups and you have your downs. And people that understand that and, live a fiscally responsible life, that are intelligent, that have marketable skills and are willing to work, for the most part, shouldn't have that much of a problem with it when the government isn't meddling. The problem is when you have the government meddling, they're trying to constantly make it appear as if things are getting better because they want to keep getting elected. They could just let the free market work itself out. Some more people might get voted out of office every once in a while, but the economy would be better off as a result.
Okay. Now, I want to get back to internet freedom a little bit. Like I said, there's a lot of bills that have been passed, and a lot of it is under the guise of...
A message has been received.
Sorry, I shouldn't have had that in here. A lot of it's under the guise of stopping online piracy or this kind of thing, but I mean, it's very difficult for the American people to believe that that's their real interest when we know that things like Napster, Kazaa, these file sharing, programs were written by the big corporations. So what is, in your opinion, their goal behind passing this legislation, and is there a way to protect free speech on the internet?
Well, I think where there's a will, there's a way. I'm not very internet savvy in regards to how things operate, but when you hear about what goes on and systems being hacked into and technology constantly evolving, every time there's software made to prevent a hack from happening, the hackers will find a way to get through it. So it's interesting to see the government trying to go up against this new frontier of the internet, because I have a hard time believing that governments are just going to pass laws all over the world and everybody that uses the internet is going to comply and nobody's going to find a way around it. But my opinion is that people shouldn't have to find a way around the government to use freedom on the internet. It's freedom of speech. If you're using it in a learning capacity, it's almost like a massive library. So nobody's chasing after you that you took a book out of the library and it's copyright infringement. It just seems this is just frivolous legislation. Under the guise that you're disenfranchising people that have made a ridiculous amount of money already. So you're stealing their music by listening to it. It's art. There's only so much you could do to keep the public from enjoying art. It's like saying if you went to a museum and took a picture of a work of art, that it's a copyright infringement that you have it. It just seems frivolous, and getting back into this problem of corporate personhood, giving corporations rights that are infringing on the rights of the people. It's never intended in America's founding to have this corporate personhood.